So one question you might ask is, when does it make sense to do really time-intensive assessment, and when does it make sense to do something that could go a little faster? The short answer is that impressionistic, subjective data from people close to a new effort, teachers, students, parents, can be collected really quickly and can be very powerful for rapid prototyping and iteration. Let me tell you a story about my lab here at MIT, the Teaching Systems Lab. We're working on a research project to investigate a series of teacher practice spaces, games and simulations that let people rehearse for and reflect on important decisions in teaching. We follow a process that starts with figuring out what we want teachers to practice. We call that concept mapping. And then we prototype games, simulations, and other kinds of practice spaces. First, we just test them internally. We play them with each other in the lab. That might be the equivalent of a teacher creating a new lesson plan and showing it to some colleagues for some feedback. Then, every 2 months, we invite teachers into our lab for a playtesting session, where we try new games with them, get feedback, and come up with ideas for refinement. If things are working well there, then we deploy our more refined tools in the field, in teacher education's method classes or teacher professional development workshops. None of our projects have gotten to the last stage yet, but eventually we hope that some of our projects will be mature enough to test with things like randomized controlled trials that can give us really rigorous evidence of how well things are working. Moving up this ladder, we go from more prototype and testing kinds of experiences to more real field trials. And we change the kinds of evidence that we gather along the way, from more subjective impressions at the beginning and then artifacts from the learning experience. Then we might create near transfer tasks. So for a game about looking at student work in math, we might ask people to grade a few math problems, something like that. Finally, we eventually collect data about teacher behavior from classroom observations and ultimately things like student test scores or student life outcomes. The idea is that as we start, we want quick, cheap, and easy assessment measures to collect to see if we're headed in the right direction. And as we get to bigger scale investments with more consequences for more learners, we use more detailed methods. So the general insight from our lab that might be helpful for you all here: when you start off with a project, people's subjective impressions from teachers, parents, students, and others are usually easy enough to collect and can often help you get pointed in the right direction. For bigger investments, you might want to do more systematic assessment that's more time intensive, and it'll give you more rigorous sense of how well your project is going.